And welcome back. Joining us in studio, we have University of Wyoming professor Jim King. He is joining us now live via Zoom from Wyoming. And first off, Jim, I want to say, go Cowboys.
Go Pokes.
All right, go Pokes. I wore my gold today. I'm a UW alumni, and so we're so happy to have you on the show today. Of course, we're talking politics. We're talking that Wyoming primary election. We want to get the recap from you. What went down? What were Wyoming voters thinking? Obviously, it was a landslide win for Harriet Hageman. Let's talk about the Hageman-Cheney race.
This was very clearly a referendum on Liz Cheney. In pre-election polling, Hageman was ahead in polls for months. There was no surprise on Tuesday night. Generally, what we found was people were just unhappy with Liz Cheney, that they did not feel that she was paying attention to the state, that she had become a national politician and not a state politician. That certainly was the theme of Hageman's campaign throughout, and I think we saw that played out on Tuesday.
Yeah, so we saw that playing out. I know she was in Washington, D.C., really focusing a lot on what was going on in D.C. and the Trump and the investigation with the riot. And what was Harriet Hageman doing back here on the ground? Because from what I've heard and from what I've seen, there was a lot of grassroots effort, although she was backed by Trump. So there was money in the campaign, but maybe talk to us about that funding and how the funding compared with Cheney versus Hageman and how that Hageman came out on top.
Well, Hageman and Cheney both had more than enough money to run a campaign in Wyoming. Last campaign finance reports, which came about 3 weeks before the election, Hageman had over $3 million. That's more than enough to run a campaign. That she pretty much matched kind of what Cheney had topped out in previous campaigns. That gave her the money she needed to be on television, on radio, to travel the state. Cheney had substantially more. She raised $14 million, but there's a point of diminishing returns. She could not spend all that money in Wyoming. Now, one of the things that did play out during this campaign, a couple of things. One is, of course, Cheney was in Washington participating in the January 6th Select Committee hearings, but she was also casting votes. The House of Representatives was in session. People expect their representative to be there casting votes in those circumstances. But there was also reports of death threats against Cheney, and so she limited her campaigning to private events that were not a lot of advance notice. She was not just simply going out in the community as candidates normally do. So this is a very difficult circumstance for her to try to run a campaign. But as I said earlier, she had been behind in the polls. The first polls we saw late last spring, and things never changed.
Right, and we only have about 10 seconds left, but what can you tell us about the future? What do you expect for Cheney? A presidential run? We've heard rumors.
We've heard rumors. There were reports in the national media that she is considering this, and that's the best we have right now.
All right, well, University of Wyoming professor Jim King, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're welcome.